Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last closing ceremony. My name is Michael Kelly, and joining us this evening from the Australian Army is Major Kim Wilcox. We warmly welcome the family of Captain Harry Andrew Hampton Garner, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families who support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by members of the family and visitors. Please stand in singing the national anthem, join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where the families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help us, all Australians, understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Captain Harry Andrew Hampton Garner, who was killed on active service with the 2nd Australian Imperial Force during the Second World War. Born in Burwood, New South Wales, on the 13th of May 1919, Harry was the son of Henry and Florence Mary Garner. He attended the local school and upon graduation started working as a clerk. Harry Garner is my great-uncle. He and I come from a proud military family. His father had served in the British and Australian armies, and his brother Edward and his sister Florence both served during the Second World War. Edward in the 7th Division and Florence in the Australian Women's Army Service. Both survived the conflict, and I'd like to especially acknowledge Florence, my nana, who is here with us today, along with members of the extended Garner family, here with us or watching on webcast. In July 1940, Harry enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force and was posted to the 8th Division, Australian Army Service Corps. During training, he rose quickly through the ranks and was promoted to lieutenant. In February 1941, he embarked in Sydney for overseas service aboard the famous ocean liner, the Queen Mary, which had been converted to a troop ship. On the 18th of February, the Queen Mary arrived in Singapore with the 1st Detachment of the 8th Division, who would form part of the British and Commonwealth garrison forces assembled at Malaya. The Japanese invasion of Malaya began just after midnight on the 8th of December 1941, and from mid-January 1942, the units of the 8th Division were involved in fierce fighting on the Malayan Peninsula. By the beginning of February, the British and Commonwealth forces had been pushed back to the island of Singapore, and on the night of the 8th of February, Japanese forces began landing on Singapore Island. Units of the 8th Division bore the brunt of the Japanese landing on the northwestern area of Singapore, and heavy casualties were inflicted on both sides. 75 years ago today, on the 11th of February 1942, Harry Andrew Hampton Garner was killed in action. He was one of almost 1,800 Australians killed in the month-long campaign in Malaya and Singapore. One of almost 900 Australians killed in just 1 week of fighting on Singapore Island, and one of 24 members of his unit killed that day. Anecdotal reports from survivors of the Australian Army Service Corps report that Harry was called upon to take out a patrol, despite being a logistics officer and not well trained in fighting. When his patrol encountered the Japanese, Harry told them to retreat, but he was captured, and members of the patrol believe he was beheaded. He was 22 years old. Posthumously promoted to captain, his body was never recovered. Today, his name is remembered with a headstone in the Kranji War Memorial, just north of the city of Singapore. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, among some 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Captain Harry Andrew Hampton Garner, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the closing ceremony. Thank you very much for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.